Hello, everyone. We're going to look at some of the idioms that get frequently used by native English speakers. Idioms are a very important part of English. Um, in fact, this is how um, the native English speakers communicate. Um, you know, if you look at subcontinent, people who speak English in subcontinent, like India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, and all those places that particularly in Asia, they are very primitive in the way they speak. By introducing idioms into your repertoire, you'll end up um, sounding like a native English speaker, which is great if you can achieve that. So without further ado, I'm going to take you through some of these idioms from the site called idiomsite.com. It's all publicly available. You can go and have a look at it at any time. The first one here, it's a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. It's basically, it's got nothing to do with bird, right? So that's how the idioms work. You're talking about, you're basically saying, if you try to just sort of interpret it, if you try to word for word, if you try to translate it, it's not going to make any sense to you. What it really means is like a little proverb, all right? Um, you know, it's far from it, but just basically, this is how the native English speakers speak when they're explaining something that, having something that is certain is much better than taking risk for more, because chances are that you might lose everything. So in that instance, where instead of just sort of going, um, explaining all of these, you could just say a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. It doesn't really get used much, okay, but here's one here, a blessing in disguise, that actually gets used all the time by native English speakers, particularly in Australia and in the UK. As something good that it doesn't recognize at first. So that you come across a situation where that you might feel angry or might feel disappointed to begin with, but that ended up being a good thing later on in life. So in that situation, you can actually use, you know, I was wrong at the time. It's a blessing in disguise. It's basically, you know, in situations where that you may have chosen a field, field of work that you weren't 100%, pardon me, you weren't 100% sure about it. You didn't want to take it on. It was just, at the end of the day, it was a blessing in disguise, and it's just, ended up achieving your goals much faster through your choice. So, it felt as though that it should have gone that way, but you took, you went on to went on a different path, and it felt like, you're not going to get anywhere with this, but you certainly achieved your goals by taking this route. So, it's a blessing in disguise. You can use that in the situation. And other situation we use blessing in disguise is that, sometimes you have a long-term relationship with someone, and you have a break. Sometimes you have a breakup and whatever, and you felt so sad and whatever, and later on down the track, you realize that that was the best thing that ever happened to you. Okay, that's probably a better choice of context, I suppose. And you felt like, oh my God, this is the end of the world. But was a blessing in disguise, because you broke up with that person, you ended up finding the right person for yourself. You know, you can use that in the situation. A chip on your shoulder, being upset for something that happened in the past. You're basically sort of holding a grudge, and you didn't want to move on from that. Okay, in that situation, so he's got a big chip on his shoulder. Okay, it's something that gets used all the time by native English speakers, particularly the Americans use that. He's got a chip on his shoulder like the size of Montana. That's something that I've heard them using. Um, and a dime a dozen is actually something that gets used all the time. That is, we've got, you the doctors a dime a dozen these days. We've got too many of them, and not many hospitals. It's actually one of the things. It's like it's cheap. There are doctors everywhere, and there are engineers everywhere. There's construction workers everywhere. Um, there's skilled labor everywhere. These are things that you can get a doctor. Doctors a dime a dozen. It's basically, there are doctors everywhere. You can just go to anyone if you like. It's not a rarity. It's commonly used and commonly available for you to use. Okay, so doubting Thomas, it doesn't get used much, but is a skeptic who needs physical or personal evidence in order to believe something. So, basically, someone who's very, very skeptical, we call him a doubting Thomas. A drop in the bucket is something that is used all the time. A very small part of something big or whole. So, what you're learning today is just a drop in the bucket. You've got plenty of other idioms and other things that you can learn. The best way to learn English is to, go through, things like this. Idioms will help you um, a lot in learning the language properly. Because if you're just learning the words without the context in which they're being used, you're not going to really understand the meaning behind it, because English is very precise in the way that you should be using the words. So you have to be really using a phrase or a sentence or whatever, like an idiom like that, in a perfect situation. If you use it in where you shouldn't be using, it's not going to make any sense to people who's actually listening to you. Okay, so a drop in the bucket is just something that a very small part of something that's big or whole. Okay. It's got nothing to do with a drop. It's nothing to do with a bucket. When you use it all together, it makes something. It means something else. Okay, so a drop in the bucket. A fool and his money are easily parted. It's easy for a foolish person to lose her or his money. Um, you know, just basically people that are, lavish, and they don't really put away for a rainy day. So again, that's another idiom that gets used all the time. Put something away for a rainy day. Um, you know, Save at least 10-20% of your income, put it aside, don't touch it. Okay, and get in the habit of saving. But people don't do that. They just, it's a fool and his money easily parted. Some people just sort of live week to week, and that's actually a terrible situation to be in. You basically go and get credit cards and things like that. It's just basically creates a lot of inflation in the country, and which is not a good way to go. You're supposed to be using your own cash wherever it's possible, but people, foolish people don't put away money and they just sort of spend it. They spend it all, and they live week to week. And when they do money for any emergency, they usually borrow the money. If they have a credit card, they might actually use that. It's probably not a good way to be. Okay, and that's when it's actually used for this money are easily parted. A house divided against itself cannot stand. So everyone involved must unify and function together, or it will not work. Will not work out. So house divided against itself cannot stand. So it's not about the house; it's about a group of people, part of an organization, part of a business, and probably some, a bunch of directors that are sitting around the table. They should agree on things. If they don't, if the house is divided against itself, it cannot stand, right? So, this is something that gets used all the time outside the boardrooms, but I think it's just something that gets used frequently, and a house divided against itself cannot stand. We have to really do something about explaining what this is all about to all of the members of the board, so that everyone can agree on that. Okay. Um, a leopard can't change his spots. It cannot change who you are. So just basically, it's something that is encouraged, in the Western world, is that you should be who you are. By being who you are, you feel comfortable in your own skin. And again, that's another idiom that gets used all the time. You should feel comfortable in your own skin, that so that people feel comfortable dealing with a real person. Right? You don't need to really put on a facade to attract people into your life. Right? A facade is actually like a mask that you put on to be able to be, happy and nice and whatever. And, in fact, you're exactly the opposite within yourself. So, I mean, I'm not asking you to be, upset all the time, or, don't be polite with people, but I'm just telling you that you should really be who you are, right? Don't try to be a different person. So if I, personally, I try and be the same person, wherever I am. So I tend to, you know, act as though that, regardless of the situation that I put in, I always have my principle that I think that way. So that's what it boils down to. So a leopard can't change its spots. Um, this is just something that gets used on a daily basis, but it's good to know you cannot change who you are, type of thing. So a penny saved is a penny earned. Again, it's pretty old English, that one. So by not spending money, you're saving money little by little. So in this instance, they talking about when somebody says a penny, it's basically them talking about the money side of it. Okay, they're not necessarily talking about a coin. A picture paints 1,000 words. That actually gets used quite a lot. Okay, a visual presentation is far more descriptive than words. So while you're talking to someone and you're trying to explain something, you can basically say, "Look, let me send you a picture," and a picture paints 1,000 words. Um, that is actually get used quite a bit. A piece of cake that gets used all the time. When a task is a task that can be accomplished very easily, you can say it's a piece of cake. Can you take the dog for a walk? Yep, absolutely. It's a piece of cake. I can do that. Or can you actually complete this assignment for me? Absolutely, I can do that. It's a piece of cake. Okay, so you don't say much. Just yep, no problem. It's a piece of cake. And the person who says asking you to do the task, they'll know what you mean by that. Okay. Slap the wrist. That's actually something that's used all the time. Even on everyday news on TV, it's used as slap the wrist. It's basically a very mild punishment for something. When somebody feels as though that they should have, been punished, given a bigger punishment, but they got away with, a few days of community service or something like that. That's when it usually gets used. The public or the actual um, people who actually took up the court expected a bigger punishment, but ended up being just a slap in the wrist. So it's a mild punishment unexpectedly. Okay. A taste of your own medicine. That's actually something that's used all the time. When you're mistreated the way treat others. So basically, um, let's say you're rude to people or whatever it may be, and someone else is going to be rude to you. It's the karma, right? So everything that you put out there will come back to you. So someone will one day give a taste of your own medicine because you're so rude to people. You're going to get it back. Okay, and when you it's usually gets used in a negative way. It doesn't get used in a positive way. Okay, well, it's just a matter of time before you get a taste of your own medicine, because someone's going to come back to you and say something nasty and rude and whatever it may be. It doesn't get used in a positive way. Okay, it's just always in negative situations. Okay. Toss up, a result that is still unclear and can go either way. So it's going to be a bit of a toss up. I haven't really made up my mind yet. It's going to be a toss up. Okay. Actions speak louder than words. That gets used all the time. Again, it's better to actually do something than just talk about it. When somebody says, I'm going to be a very loyal employee to you, and I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. Instead of living in a gonna world, I'm going to do it. And say, like, actions speak louder than words. I'd like to see what you would do in 3 months' time. Most people can pretend that they're a good employee for the first 3 months or so. When things get the shining, the shine gets you know what do they say? When everything's new, people will be enthusiastic about what they do and things like that. And as the days go by, they lose enthusiasm. So in that situation, so if somebody says, when they're really um, talking and when they're high on adrenaline and say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and so actions speak louder than words. I'd like to see what happens in 3 months' time. Okay. Yeah, actions speak loud. So you can actually use that when people are actually promising stuff to you as well. And I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, whatever. And so yeah, actions speak louder than words. So if you say you can do all this, why wouldn't you go ahead and do that anyway? Okay. So it's one of those things that you can use all the time. Add fuel to the fire. It's basically, whenever something is done to make a bad situation, even when um, make a bad situation even worse than it is. So basically, a couple of people fighting, and you walk in and say, just give them more to fight about. Give them more to fight about. Tell them nasty things about each other, right? That's adding fuel to the fire. Right? And there are situations where, like, he's going to be like it's always negative type of thing. So when things are going bad, you add more to it, and that's basically adding fuel to the fire. It's usually someone behind the scene, trying to manipulate the situation by adding fuel to the fire. Okay. Against the clock, rushed and short on time. So I'm working against the clock at the moment. I've got quite a bit to do, but I don't have the time to actually achieve all that in a set period of time. So I'm working against the clock. I use that all the time. All bark and no bite. That's actually something that's used all the time. It's not about the dog. They're not talking about the dog. When someone is threatening and or aggressive but not willing to engage in a fight. It's just basically, barking like a dog does, and they're not really doing anything, and they don't really want to have a fight. They're just teasing. They're trying to, they're all bark, saying, "I'm going to hit you. I'm going to break your bone," and whatever it may be. But he's not really doing anything. It's just, he's all bark. No bite, mate. Don't worry about him. It gets used all the time. And then you've got all Greek to me. All right. So if you don't understand what the hell is going on, so it's all Greek to me, mate. I can't understand you. Meaningless and incomprehensible. Like someone who cannot read, speak, understand any Greek, any of the Greek language would be. So it's not just about a language. It's about if someone's trying to explain something, you don't understand it. It's all gibberish to me, or it's all Greek to me, mate. I don't understand what you're talking about. It's over my head. It's another way of expressing that. All in the same boat. It's actually something that's used all the time. When everyone's facing the same challenges, so we're all in the same boat. We still have to go to work, and we'll still have to make some money and make sure that we look after our families and so on. So we're all in the same boat. And in situations where that I'm in the same boat as you, I've got a big mortgage that I have to pay off, and so on. So in that situation, it gets used. So people that are actually in similar situations usually gets used where when you actually say, "Look, I'm sort of trapped," or do something like that. So it usually gets used in a negative situation when you're complaining about something. Um, and an arm and a leg, that actually is used all the time. Very expensive, a large amount of money. So, it's a very nice car. Hope it didn't cost you an arm and a leg. It's a pretty nice car. It's not going to, you're not going to be spending a lot of money on this. I hope you didn't actually spend a lot of money on this to get this car. Usually, like if you talk about, look, if you want to go and get yourself a Porsche, you can actually do that. It's going to cost you an arm and a leg, right? Or you can go and get yourself a Holden or a Ford. It might be reasonable. So it all boils down to, your affordability. If you can afford a car, That's one way of using it, and there's quite a lot of other situations like this. Um, yeah, yeah, it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. It's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. It's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. That's how it actually gets used. Um, okay, so we've done that. An extra grind, so to have dispute with someone, so it doesn't actually get used all the time. It's nice to know an extra grind. It's basically you got a bit of a problem with someone, so you're just going to be grinding it. Apple of my eye is someone who's cherished above all others. So if you have a daughter or a son, they're your apple of your apple, apples of your eye. So it basically used as he's the apple of my eye, or she is the apple of my eye. Um, so it's basically someone who's very very special to you. So he's the apple of my eye. As high as a kite, anything that is high up in the sky, as high as a kite. It's really up in the air at the moment. It actually gets used when someone's actually on drugs, and he's high as a kite at the moment, mate. So it's one of those expressions. The drop of a hat, willing to do something immediately. So, if you need anything, just let me know. I'll get it done for you at the drop of a hat. Okay, it's got nothing to do with hat. It really means I'm willing to do anything immediately for you. Just let me know. Okay, I'll do everything for you at the drop of a hat. Okay.